You've been lied to about wanting. Every breath you take is wrapped around the pursuit of something that dissolves the moment you grasp it. Your entire life, this frantic scramble toward happiness, love, success, peace, is built on a fundamental delusion that has turned you into a hungry ghost, forever reaching for mirages in a desert of your own making. The more desperately you chase what you think you need, the more it slips through your fingers like water. The harder you grip, the emptier your hands become. This is not coincidence. This is not bad luck. This is the iron law of desire that governs your existence, and you have been sleepwalking through it, believing that the next achievement, the next relationship, the next moment of pleasure will finally fill the void that grows larger with every attempt to satisfy it. You call it ambition. You call it love. You call it purpose. But strip away the noble names and what remains is a creature in perpetual flight from itself, convinced that salvation lies somewhere other than here, someone other than who you are, some time other than now. The chase has become your identity, and the identity has become your prison. Look at your life. Really look. How many mornings have you awakened with that familiar ache, that sense that something is missing, that today you must find what yesterday failed to deliver? How many nights have you fallen asleep disappointed, promising yourself that tomorrow will be different, that tomorrow you will finally catch what has been running from you your entire existence? This is the grand deception. That fulfillment exists. In the future, that satisfaction waits at the end of striving. That peace can be hunted down and captured like prey. You have been chasing your own shadow, mistaking the darkness for the light, the absence for the presence, the emptiness for fullness. From the moment consciousness dawned in your small body, they taught you to want what you did not have. Your parents praised you for striving. Your teachers rewarded you for achieving. Your culture worshipped at the altar of more. They carved into your soul the sacred commandment. You are not enough as you are, but you might become enough if you try hard enough, want hard enough, suffer hard enough. The religion of perpetual dissatisfaction was your first catechism. Before you could walk properly, you learned to reach. Before you could speak clearly, you learned to ask. Before you could think independently, you learned that happiness was a destination you had not yet reached. Love was a prize you had not yet won. Peace was a state you had not yet earned. They convinced you that desire was natural, that wanting was healthy, that the ache in your chest was proof of your humanity. But what they never told you was that this ache was artificial, a wound they had inflicted, a thirst they had created, a hunger they had taught you to mistake for your essential nature. In school, they measured your worth by how much you wanted to excel. In relationships, they taught you to pursue love like a conquest. In careers, they made you believe that wanting more was the only path to meaning. In spiritual traditions, they even convinced you to chase enlightenment, to desire the end of desire, to want not to want, the ultimate joke of a mind trapped in its own contradiction. This is the cruelest joke ever played on consciousness. To convince a being that it is fundamentally lacking, that its natural state is inadequacy, that its birthright is emptiness waiting to be filled by external things. They turned you into a beggar in your own kingdom, a stranger in your own home, a seeker of what you already possess. Your wanting became your wound became your way, and your way became a labyrinth with no exit. Only endless corridors of fresh desires leading to fresh disappointments, each one promising to be different from the last, each one identical in its ultimate futility. The more you fed the hunger, the hungrier it grew. The more you satisfied the thirst, the thirstier you became. And so you learned to live in a state of chronic emergency, always one step behind your own fulfillment, always one breath away from the happiness that perpetually retreated just beyond your grasp. You became addicted to the chase itself, mistaking the motion for progress, the struggle for meaning, the pursuit for purpose. Alan Watts saw through this elaborate deception with the clarity of still water reflecting sky. He understood that desire is not the problem. The pursuit of desire is the problem. The moment you chase after any experience, you split yourself in two. The chaser and the chased, the one who wants and the thing wanted, the subject hungry for an object that will complete it. This division is the source of all suffering because it creates the illusion of separation where none exists. You become a dog chasing its own tail, a wave trying to catch the ocean, a flame reaching for fire. The very act of reaching creates the distance you are trying to close. The very act of grasping creates the separation you are trying to heal. In this pursuit, you lose the present moment, the only moment in which life actually occurs, the only moment in which satisfaction is possible, the only moment in which you are whole and complete and lacking nothing. You trade the reality of now for the fantasy of then, the substance of being for the shadow of becoming, the fullness of what is for the emptiness of what might be. Watts understood what the ancient sages knew. The pursuer and the pursued are one. The seeker and the sought are the same consciousness playing an elaborate game of hide-and-seek with itself. When you chase happiness, happiness runs away because you have forgotten that happiness is what you are, not what you can possess. When you pursue love, love becomes elusive because you have mistaken yourself for someone who lacks love rather than someone who is love itself. The ancient wisdom speaks of this through every culture. The Tao that can be pursued is not the eternal. Tao. The happiness that must be chased is not true happiness. The love that must be earned is not unconditional love. The peace that must be achieved is not the peace that passes understanding. Every mystic, every sage, every awakened being throughout history has pointed to the same ridiculous truth. What you are seeking is what you are. What you are chasing is what you are running from. What you think you lack is what you have never not been. The water you thirst for is the very ocean in which you swim. The light you seek is the very awareness through which seeking appears. But the mind conditioned to pursue cannot grasp this truth through more pursuing. The ego trained to achieve cannot achieve the end of achievement through greater effort. The one who has learned to want cannot stop wanting by wanting to stop wanting. This is the koan, the paradox, the cosmic joke that breaks the spell of endless seeking. But there's another way to live, another way to be. Not as a seeker, but as a finder, not as someone who lacks, but as someone who overflows. This is the way of the sun, which gives light not because it must, but because it is luminous. This is the way of the river, which moves not because it is driven, but because flow is its nature. This is the way of the flower, which blooms not to achieve blooming, but because blooming is what flowers do. Imagine dropping the pursuit entirely. Imagine releasing the grip that has been your constant companion since childhood. Imagine discovering that what you have been chasing has been chasing you. That life, love, joy, peace have been trying to give themselves to you while you were running in the opposite direction, convinced they were somewhere else. This is not passive resignation. This is active receptivity. This is not giving up. This is waking up to discover that the race was an illusion. The prize was already yours. The destination was always here. When you stop chasing happiness, happiness stops running away. When you stop grasping for love, love stops slipping through your fingers. When you stop pursuing peace, peace reveals itself as your original nature. From this space of non-pursuit, action arises that is not driven by lack, but inspired by abundance. You move not because you are incomplete, but because movement is the dance of completeness with itself. You create not because you are empty, but because creativity is what flows naturally from fullness. You love not because you need something from another, but because love is what you are when you are not trying to be anything else. This is the virtue of the full cup, which gives not because it is trying to become full, but because it cannot help but overflow. This is the virtue of the ripe fruit, which falls not because it is seeking the ground, but because ripeness naturally releases itself. This is the virtue of the awakened heart, which loves not because it lacks love, but because love is its very substance. In this state, desire still arises, but it arises like clouds in an empty sky, naturally, effortlessly, without the desperate quality of need. You may want food when hungry, rest when tired, companionship when alone, but these wants do not carry the frantic energy of someone trying to escape their own nature. They are simply the natural movements of life expressing itself through the form you call yourself. The Buddha spoke of this as desireless desire, wanting that arises from wholeness rather than emptiness, action that flows from fullness rather than lack. The Taoists called it Wu Wei, action without forcing, desire without grasping, movement without struggle. The Christians mystically understood it as loving because God first loved, responding from abundance rather than acting from scarcity. Yet even this understanding, even this liberation from the chase, must eventually dissolve into silence. The one who no longer pursues can become attached to non-pursuit. The one who has discovered wholeness can become identified with being whole. The very wisdom that sets you free can become a new prison if you grasp it too tightly. There comes a moment when even the highest truth must be released, when even the most profound realization must die, when even the deepest understanding must return to the silence from which it emerged. This is the ultimate maturity, to hold your insights so lightly that they can transform, to love your wisdom so little that you can let it go, to be so unattached to enlightenment that you can forget you were ever unenlightened. The river that seemed so important, the sun that appeared so constant, the very ground of being that felt so solid, all of these are merely temporary forms dancing in the eternal formless, waves appearing and disappearing in an ocean that has never been disturbed. Even the one who understands this understanding is just another wave, beautiful and temporary, arising and passing away. In this ultimate silence, there is no one left to chase anything, no one left to be chased, no pursuit and no escape. There is only what there has always been, the seamless wholeness of existence expressing itself as the play of apparent separation and reunion, the cosmic game of hide and seek that consciousness plays with itself for the sheer joy of discovery and rediscovery. This silence is not empty, it is full of infinite potential. This stillness is not dead, it is alive with every possibility. This nothingness is not vacant, it is pregnant with everything that has ever been or could ever be. It is the womb of all experience, the source of all desire, the ground from which all seeking arises and to which all finding returns. Even the desire to understand must ultimately surrender to not knowing. Even the impulse to be free must eventually release itself to mystery. Even the deepest love must dissolve into the space that makes love possible. This is not loss. This is the ultimate finding. This is not death. This is the birth that never ends. From this silence, if action arises, it arises without effort. If words come, they come without a speaker. If love flows, it flows without an experiencer of love. Everything happens by itself, through itself, as itself in the vast space of awareness that has never moved from its center, never been touched by the stories of seeking and finding, never been disturbed by the dreams of lack and fulfillment. If these words have touched something true in you, if you recognize yourself in this mirror of endless chasing, then write these words in the comments below as your commitment to a new way of being. I release the chase and embrace what is already here. This is not just a statement, it is a doorway. This is not just words, it is a return to your original nature before the world taught you to want what you already are. Write it not because you must, but because something in you recognizes the truth of it. Something in you remembers what it was like before the chase began. Let this declaration be your first act of non-pursuit, your first gesture of surrender, your first taste of the freedom that comes not from getting what you want, but from discovering that you are what you have always wanted. Let it be a reminder that the very one who writes these words is the fulfillment of every search, the answer to every question, the home that every journey seeks to find. Continue to explore these depths. Let the understanding deepen not through pursuit, but through patient allowing. Watch the next video not as someone seeking answers, but as someone allowing wisdom to unfold naturally, like a flower opening to the sun that never stopped shining, like water finding its own level in the vast ocean of being that has never been separate from what you truly are. Read more, not to accumulate knowledge, but to remember what you have always known. Study the sages not to become like them, but to recognize that you are what they point to. Meditate not to achieve states, but to rest in the stateless awareness that you are. Live not to get somewhere, but to celebrate being nowhere other than here. No one other than this. Nothing other than what is eternally present. The chase ends where it began. Here, now. in the heart that has never actually moved from its center, in the awareness that has never actually been disturbed by the storms of wanting, in the silence that has never actually been broken by the noise of seeking. You are already home. You have always been home. The only question is whether you will stop running long enough to notice. And in that stopping, in that sudden stillness, in that moment of perfect rest, you will discover what Alan Watts knew, what every sage has always known. The more you chase, the more it escapes, but the moment you stop chasing, you realize there was never anything to catch, nowhere to go, nothing to become. There is only this, eternal, present, whole, complete, lacking nothing, needing nothing, being everything, that seeking could ever hope to find.